Chapter 1. The True Meaning of Well-Being. There is a profound difference between simply not being miserable and actually feeling alive. For generations, society has approached the human mind and the human condition with a singular, limiting focus: fixing what is broken. We have treated human existence like a leaking ship, desperately bailing out water to prevent ourselves from sinking. We have asked over and over again how to cure the sadness, how to quiet the anxiety, and how to manage the pain. But patching the holes in the hull of a ship only ensures that you do not drown. It does nothing to propel you forward. It does not catch the wind in your sails, and it certainly does not help you navigate toward a breathtaking destination. The absence of suffering is not the same thing as the presence of joy. For a very long time, when we dared to look beyond pure survival, we aimed for a target we called happiness. But happiness, as it is commonly understood, is a fragile and fleeting thing. We are often sold the illusion that happiness means wearing a permanent smile, maintaining a perfectly cheerful mood from the moment we wake up, and never experiencing a moment of frustration. We chase a temporary, emotional high. Yet, if you have ever raised a child, built a business from the ground up, or trained tirelessly for a difficult physical endeavor, you know a fundamental truth. The most rewarding experiences in life are rarely accompanied by a constant, cheerful smile. They involve struggle, frustration, and immense effort. If we measure our lives strictly by how many cheerful moments we string together, we miss the profound beauty of a life truly well lived. To step into your highest potential, you must redefine what you are aiming for. The goal is no longer just to be happy. The goal is to flourish. Flourishing is a multi-dimensional state of being. It is not a single emotion, but a robust tapestry woven from several essential threads, each one critical to your overall strength and vitality. The first of these threads is, of course, positive emotion. This is the warmth of gratitude, the spark of hope, the comfort of peace, and the thrill of joy. We need these feelings. They are the sunlight that warms our days. But sunlight alone cannot sustain a deep, fulfilling life. Equally vital to our emotional landscape is the profound state of engagement. Think about someone entirely consumed by their craft. Picture a master woodworker carefully carving a piece of oak, a musician lost in the rhythm of a complex symphony, or even a gardener working with their hands deep in the soil. In those moments, time seems to vanish. The endless chatter of the mind quiets down. The ego disappears. There is no anxiety about the future or regret about the past. There is only the pure electric connection between the person and the task at hand. This deep absorption is where we find our highest capacities. When we seek out activities that demand our full attention and utilize our greatest strengths, we are not just passing the time. We are actively constructing our own well-being. Yet, even with positive emotions and deep engagement, a solitary life remains incomplete. We are fundamentally, biologically, and spiritually wired for connection. Consider your absolute best memories, your greatest triumphs, and your moments of uncontrollable laughter. Now ask yourself, were you alone? Almost universally, our highest highs are shared. When life inevitably knocks us to the ground, it is the hand of another person that pulls us back up to our feet. The idea that we can achieve ultimate well-being in total isolation is an incredibly destructive myth. Doing for others, connecting deeply, and nurturing genuine bonds are not just nice additions to a good life, they are the absolute bedrock of it. Other people matter. The quality of your life is inextricably linked to the quality of your relationships. Beyond our connections with individuals lies the fundamental human need for meaning. A life lived purely for oneself, chasing only personal pleasure and personal gain, eventually becomes a very small and suffocating prison. True liberation comes from attaching your life to something larger than your own reflection. Meaning is the belief that you are serving a greater purpose. That purpose might be raising a compassionate family, dedicating your career to an important cause, creating art that moves others, or simply being a pillar of support in your local community. When you have a strong sense of meaning, you develop an unbreakable anchor. The storms of life will still come. The winds of adversity will still blow, but a life rooted in deep meaning will never be washed away. Finally, we must recognize the undeniable human drive for accomplishment. We strive to improve, to to build, to win, and to master our environments. This is not about the superficial pursuit of wealth, the hollow validation of public applause, or the desperate need to prove others wrong. True accomplishment is the pursuit of excellence for its own sake. It is the quiet, internal satisfaction of knowing you pushed your boundaries, developed your skills, and achieved mastery simply because the pursuit of greatness is woven into your DNA. Doing something well, just to do it well, is a critical pillar of a flourishing life. When you bring these elements together, positive emotion, deep engagement, authentic relationships, profound meaning, and the pursuit of mastery, you construct a life that is truly unbreakable. You stop looking for a quick fix or a shortcut to a temporary good mood. You begin to understand that well-being is not a magical destination where nothing ever goes wrong. It is an active daily practice of building a magnificent structure. If your entire life is built on the single pillar of wanting to feel cheerful, you will collapse the moment tragedy strikes. But when you build your life upon this broader, deeper foundation, you develop the ultimate resilience. You are no longer just surviving the waters of life. You are navigating them with power, purpose, and profound vitality. Chapter 2. Practical exercises for creating lasting happiness. Think for a moment about the last time you had a truly wonderful day. Perhaps the weather was perfect, your work flowed effortlessly, and you shared a brilliant conversation with an old friend. Now, imagine that right at the end of that glorious day, someone made a slightly critical remark about your appearance or your performance. When you finally laid your head on your pillow that night, what did your mind focus on? Did you drift off to sleep wrapped in the warmth of the day's successes, or did you lie awake staring at the ceiling, replaying that one negative comment over and over again? If you are like most human beings, you obsessed over the negative. You are not broken for doing this. You are simply operating with ancient hardware. Our brains were beautifully designed by evolution for survival, not for joy. Our ancestors did not survive the brutal wilderness by stopping to admire the breathtaking colors of a sunset. They survived by constantly scanning the horizon for the predator hiding in the tall grass. We are biologically wired to notice, remember, and obsess over threats, failures, and criticisms because, historically, ignoring a negative signal could cost us our lives. But today, you are no longer running from predators in the wilderness. The problem is that your brain is still operating on that exact same alarm system. We have inherited a mind that acts like Velcro for negative experiences and Teflon for positive ones. To build a flourishing life, you cannot wait for this ancient wiring to magically update itself. You must actively, deliberately train your brain to notice the good. One of the most powerful, life-altering practices you can ever adopt is breathtakingly simple, yet profoundly difficult for the untrained mind. It requires you to end your day differently. Instead of letting your mind default to a massive inventory of everything that went wrong, everything you failed to accomplish, and everything you need to worry about tomorrow, force a hard pivot. Commit to sitting down every single evening and acknowledging 3 specific things that went well that day. They do not need to be monumental victories. It could be the fact that you tasted a truly excellent cup of coffee, that a stranger held the door for you, or that you finally solved a frustrating problem at work. But merely noticing these moments is not enough. You must ask yourself why they happened. If you had a great conversation with your partner, why did it happen? Was it because you actively chose to put your phone away and truly listen? By connecting the positive event to your own actions or the goodness of others, you are fundamentally rewiring your neural pathways. You are teaching your brain to hunt for the good with the same fierce intensity it normally reserves for hunting threats. At first, this will feel awkward and mechanical. Your mind will resist. But if you do this consistently, you will wake up one morning and realize that you are automatically noticing the beauty and the victories in real time as they happen. You will have built a completely new default setting. Beyond retraining your focus, you must profoundly shift how you view your own character. We are raised in a culture obsessed with remediation. From a very young age, we are handed report cards and taught to immediately ignore the subjects where we excelled, focusing all our anxiety and energy on the subjects where we failed. We carry this into adulthood, spending immense amounts of time, money, and emotional energy trying to fix our weaknesses, hoping to become perfectly well-rounded. But aiming to be perfectly well-rounded usually just leaves you entirely average. The people who experience the highest levels of vitality and success do not obsess over their flaws. Instead, they ruthlessly identify their core strengths, the traits that feel entirely natural, authentic, and energizing to them. Think about a person who is naturally empathetic but terrible at detailed accounting. Society often tells that person to spend hours agonizing over spreadsheets to improve their weakness. But true flourishing demands the opposite. What would happen if that person reorganized their life and their career to lean entirely into their empathy? When you identify what you are fundamentally best at, whether that is immense creativity, a capacity for deep analytical thought, or a natural gift for leadership, and intentionally design your days to use those strengths in new ways, work stops feeling like a draining obligation. It becomes a source of endless, renewable energy. There is one more crucial exercise in building lasting well-being, and it requires you to look outward. Consider the people in your life who have profoundly shaped who you are. Think of the teacher who believed in you when you were entirely lost, the friend who stood by you during your darkest hour, or the mentor who saw a spark in you that you could not see in yourself. Most of us walk around carrying an immense debt of gratitude for these people, but we keep it locked inside our own heads. We assume they know how we feel. Do not assume. Take the time to write a letter of deep, specific gratitude to someone who changed the trajectory of your life. Do not just send an email or a quick text message. Write out exactly what they did, how it impacted you, and who you have become because of their intervention. And then, if possible, read it to them. The emotional resonance of expressing pure, unadulterated gratitude is like a shockwave of positive energy. It strips away the superficial layers of daily life and connects you deeply to another human soul. It is a powerful reminder that our well-being is never built in isolation. Happiness and fulfillment are not fortunate accidents. They are not waiting for you on the other side of a promotion, a new relationship, or a larger bank account. They are the direct result of deliberate, daily practices. By fighting your biological negativity bias, fiercely leveraging your unique strengths, and actively expressing your gratitude, you take the steering wheel of your own emotional life. But as you begin this proactive work, you must also understand what has been holding you back. You must confront the profound limitations of the way we traditionally try to heal our pain.
Chapter 3. The limitations of quick fixes and symptom relief. We live in a culture that is absolutely obsessed with the quick fix. When something hurts, our immediate instinct is to numb the pain. When we feel overwhelmed, we search for the fastest possible escape route. For decades, the traditional approaches to our deepest emotional and psychological struggles have followed this exact same pattern. We treat the human mind like a machine with a blinking warning light, believing that our only goal is to find a way to turn the light off. But there is a silent, pervasive reality in the modern approach to healing. We have largely given up on the idea of a true cure. Instead, we have settled for symptom relief. We have accepted cosmetic treatments for the soul. Think about the difference between a medication that cures an infection and a medication that simply reduces a fever. One attacks the root cause and leaves you entirely free of the illness. The other merely masks the discomfort for a few hours, guaranteeing that the fever will return the moment the medication wears off. Much of what we rely on to manage our mental and emotional struggles operates exactly like that fever reducer. We use interventions that suppress the anxiety, quiet the sadness, and dial down the anger. While finding relief from agony is incredibly important, it is not the ultimate destination. If your entire strategy for well-being relies on temporary suppressants, you are trapped in an endless cycle. The moment you stop applying the fix, you find yourself right back at square one, battling the same shadows you thought you had escaped. The reason these traditional approaches often fail to create permanent transformation is that they require you to constantly fight against the mountain. They demand an immense, exhausting exertion of willpower just to maintain a baseline of normal functioning. They are not self-sustaining. To truly flourish, you cannot rely solely on exhaustive, draining methods to keep your head above water. You need practices that actually generate their own momentum, habits that become easier and more rewarding the more you do them. You need tools that do not just fight the negative, but actively cultivate the positive. One of the most remarkable self-sustaining tools for building a flourishing life involves a radical shift in how we interact with the people we care about. We are often taught that the true test of a relationship is how well a couple navigates conflict. We spend immense energy learning how to argue fairly and how to apologize. But there is a secret driver of deep, unbreakable connection that has nothing to do with fighting. It has to do with how we celebrate. Every single day, people share small victories with us. A partner comes home and announces a minor success at work. A child proudly presents a drawing. A friend texts you about finding a great parking spot. How you respond in that exact fleeting moment dictates the future strength of that relationship. Imagine your partner walks through the door, beaming, and says they just received a compliment from a difficult boss. You have a choice in how to respond. You could point out the negative, reminding them that this boss is usually terrible and will probably demand more work tomorrow. You could offer a passive, distracted response, keeping your eyes on your phone and mumbling a quick congratulations. You could even hijack the conversation, ignoring their victory to complain about your own exhausting day. All of these responses slowly erode the connection between you. But there is a fourth option. You can drop what you are doing, turn to them with genuine energy and ask them to relive the moment. You ask what the boss said, how they felt, and why they think their hard work is finally paying off. This is an active, constructive response. It amplifies the joy of the victory, makes the other person feel profoundly valued, and bonds you together in a shared upward spiral of positive emotion. The beauty of this practice is that it is completely self-reinforcing. When you respond with genuine enthusiasm, people love being around you, your own mood elevates, and the relationship deepens effortlessly. Yet as we build these positive connections, we must also profoundly rethink our relationship with negative emotions. We have been sold a dangerous illusion that a successful life means never feeling sad, anxious, or angry. We believe that if we experience these emotions, we are somehow failing. But human beings are wired with a negativity bias for a reason. Anxiety alerts us to potential danger. Anger tells us when a boundary has been crossed. Sadness helps us process loss. If you expect a life completely scrubbed of these feelings, you are setting yourself up for bitter disappointment. Furthermore, because so much of our emotional baseline is woven into our biology, attempting to eradicate every negative feeling is a battle you will never win. Instead of desperately trying to eliminate every drop of anxiety or sadness, the most resilient individuals learn to deal with it. They learn how to function magnificently alongside their negative emotions. Consider individuals who are trained to perform high-stakes rescues in terrifying conditions. Their instructors do not teach them how to magically eliminate their fear. Instead, they place them in terrifying simulations and teach them how to execute their mission even while their hearts are pounding and their adrenaline is surging. They learn that they can be terrified and courageous at the exact same time. You must adopt this same heroic posture in your own life. There will be mornings when you wake up feeling completely defeated. True resilience is not about forcing a fake smile. It is about recognizing the heavy emotion, refusing to let it dictate your identity, and stepping into your day to do meaningful work anyway. This brings us to the ultimate limitation of quick fixes. Imagine a gardener who inherits a plot of land entirely overrun by thorny weeds. The gardener spends months tirelessly pulling up every single weed, clearing the brush and turning the soil. Finally, the land is bare. If the gardener stops there, believing the job is done because the weeds are gone, what happens? They do not magically get a beautiful rose garden. They are simply left with an empty patch of dirt. Traditional approaches to healing are entirely focused on pulling the weeds. They are dedicated to removing the depression, clearing out the anxiety, and uprooting the anger. That work is necessary and brave. But removing the disabling conditions of life does not automatically create the enabling conditions for joy. If you only ever focus on fixing what is broken, the best you will ever achieve is emptiness. To experience profound well-being, you must also be a planter. You must deliberately sow the seeds of engagement, meaning, accomplishment, and deep human connection. You must nourish your strengths and water your relationships. Only then do you move beyond the fragile state of simply surviving. You step out of the empty dirt, and you begin to grow. Chapter 4. The Transformative Power of Learning Well-Being. There is a pervasive and incredibly limiting myth that most of us accept without question. We tend to believe that our baseline of well-being is a genetic lottery. We look at people who radiate joy, who bounce back quickly from adversity, and who seem deeply connected to their purpose, and we assume they were simply born that way. We tell ourselves that some people are naturally sunny, while the rest of us are doomed to weather the storms of life with whatever meager emotional umbrella we happened to inherit. This belief is not just discouraging, it is entirely false. Flourishing is not a fortunate accident of birth. It is a highly specific,
learnable set of skills. Just as you can learn to play a musical instrument, speak a foreign language, or build a complex business, you can systematically learn how to cultivate your own profound well-being. Consider for a moment how much of your life has been spent in classrooms, training seminars, and focused study. From the moment we are young children, society sits us down and demands that we learn mathematics, history, science, and literature. As we grow older, we spend thousands of hours mastering our professional crafts. We learn how to balance massive corporate budgets, how to write complex lines of computer code, or how to navigate the intricate laws of a courtroom. We are taught how to survive and compete in the modern economy. But ask yourself this: how many hours of formal, rigorous instruction have you received on how to build a meaningful life? How many classes did you take on how to cultivate deep, authentic relationships? How many teachers sat you down and showed you the exact practical mechanics of bouncing back from a devastating personal failure? For most of humanity, the answer is absolutely zero. We are left to figure out the most important aspects of our existence entirely by trial and error, usually during moments of intense crisis. But what if you approached your own psychological vitality with the exact same rigor and dedication that you apply to your career? When adults finally discover that well-being is a curriculum that can be studied and mastered, a profound shift occurs. They stop viewing happiness as a mysterious, unpredictable weather pattern that happens to them, and they start viewing it as a house they are actively building. This requires stepping out of the role of a passive observer and stepping into the role of a dedicated student. It means recognizing that your mind, much like a muscle, responds incredibly well to targeted, intentional training. The skills of identifying your highest character strengths, actively restructuring your pessimistic thoughts, and deliberately generating positive emotion are not abstract philosophies. They are practical tools that can be sharpened with daily use. Think about a highly successful professional, someone who has spent decades climbing the ladder, achieving every outward marker of success, yet secretly feels entirely empty and exhausted. This is a remarkably common tragedy. Now, imagine the same person decides to stop trying to achieve their way out of emptiness. Instead, they become a student of their own flourishing. They begin to study the exact mechanisms of human connection. They practice the discipline of gratitude, not as a fleeting thought, but as a structured, daily routine. They learn to identify the catastrophic stories their mind invents when a project fails, and they practice dismantling those stories with logic and self-compassion. At first, it feels entirely unnatural. It feels like trying to write with your non-dominant hand. But through repetition, study, and deliberate practice, a miraculous transformation takes hold. The skills become second nature. The emptiness is replaced by a profound, sustainable vitality. This is the true transformative power of learning well-being. It takes the power entirely out of the hands of circumstance and places it firmly in your own hands. You no longer need to wait for everything in your life to be perfect before you are allowed to feel good. You have the tools to generate strength and meaning even when the circumstances are incredibly difficult. You become the architect of your internal world. But the most beautiful aspect of learning these skills is that the transformation never stops with you. Well-being is beautifully, relentlessly contagious. When you commit to learning how to flourish, you inadvertently become a teacher to everyone around you. You cannot master these skills in a vacuum. When you learn how to respond to your partner's victories with active, constructive enthusiasm, you are teaching them what it feels like to be truly valued. When you learn how to navigate your own stress with grace and resilience, you become a living, breathing model for your friends and colleagues. You do not need to stand in front of a whiteboard and deliver a lecture to change the world around you. Your transformed presence becomes the ultimate lesson. This creates a spectacular ripple effect. A single person who takes the time to learn the mechanics of a flourishing life acts as a stone dropped into a calm pond. The ripples move outward, touching their family, elevating their workplace, and strengthening their community. We begin to realize that learning well-being is not a selfish pursuit. It is not about self-indulgence or ignoring the suffering in the world so that we can feel good. On the contrary, it is a profound responsibility. The world is heavily burdened by cynicism, burnout, and despair. By equipping yourself with the tools to flourish, you become a beacon of immense strength for others to lean on. Yet, as we realize how profoundly these learned skills can alter the trajectory of our adult lives, we are faced with an incredibly urgent question. If we can learn these tools now, and if they have the power to entirely reshape our reality, why are we waiting until we are exhausted, burned-out adults to begin the curriculum? If we have the blueprint for a resilient, deeply meaningful life, it is a tragedy to keep it hidden until the storms of adulthood have already done their damage. This realization leads us to the most vital frontier of all, the absolute necessity of giving these exact same tools to the generations that will follow us. Chapter 5. Educating the next generation for flourishing. If we possess the blueprint for a resilient, deeply meaningful life, it is a profound tragedy to keep it hidden until the storms of adulthood have already done their damage. Think about the incredible amount of time, energy, and resources we pour into the education of young minds. From the moment they can walk, we place them on a highly structured track designed to fill their heads with facts, formulas, and historical dates. We spend over a decade teaching them how to measure the circumference of a circle, how to diagram a sentence, and how to memorize the periodic table. We tell them that these academic metrics are the absolute keys to a successful future. Yet when a teenager experiences their first devastating heartbreak, when they are paralyzed by the anxiety of an uncertain future, or when they face a crushing personal failure, knowing the capital of a distant country offers absolutely no comfort or guidance. We are sending our youth into the most complex, rapidly changing era in human history, equipped with a brilliant map for their intellect, but entirely blindfolded when it comes to their emotional and psychological survival. There is a growing, silent crisis among the next generation. Despite living in a time of unprecedented technological connection and physical safety, young people are experiencing profound levels of stress, emptiness, and despair. We often dismiss this as a modern phase, hoping they will simply outgrow it. But the truth is much heavier. We have created an educational culture that almost exclusively rewards performance while entirely ignoring the inner architecture of the human being performing. We have conditioned children to believe that their ultimate worth is tied to a standardized test score or a letter grade on a report card. When their entire identity is wrapped up in perfect achievement, any setback feels like a catastrophic threat to their existence. We must urgently shift our perspective. We must realize that preparing a child for life requires vastly more than preparing them for an exam. The profound realization we must embrace is that teaching the skills of well-being does not detract from academic excellence. It fiercely amplifies it. For a long time, there was a stubborn belief that if schools spent time talking about emotions, resilience, and character, they would be sacrificing precious hours needed for traditional learning. We assumed that well-being was a soft, secondary luxury that distracted from the hard work of achievement. The reality is exactly the opposite. When a human mind is locked in a state of chronic anxiety, fear, or sadness, its focus narrows dramatically. It switches into survival mode, obsessing only over the immediate threat. But when a mind is experiencing positive emotion, when a child feels safe, valued, and resilient, their cognitive capacity literally expands. They become more creative, more adaptable, and more capable of absorbing complex information. A flourishing mind is a learning mind. Imagine a young student who has just completely failed a highly important mathematics exam. The traditional response is purely academic. We might hire a tutor, demand they study for 3 extra hours a night, or strip away their recreational time as a consequence. But what is happening inside that student's mind? If they have not been taught psychological resilience, they are likely telling themselves a catastrophic story. They are deciding, I am inherently stupid, or I will never succeed at anything. No amount of extra math tutoring can fix that broken internal narrative. Now imagine if that same student had been taught the specific skills of optimism and emotional regulation. Imagine if they had been trained to examine their own thoughts, to challenge that catastrophic story, and to reframe the failure as a temporary, specific hurdle rather than a permanent character flaw. They would still need to study the math, but they would do so from a place of empowerment, not a place of crushing defeat. To truly educate the next generation, we must seamlessly weave the principles of a flourishing life directly into the fabric of their daily development. This means explicitly teaching them how to identify their core strengths. Instead of constantly reminding children of where they fall short, what if we helped them discover their natural capacities for leadership, kindness, deep curiosity, or raw creativity?
When a child understands what they are uniquely good at, they develop an internal compass that cannot be easily shattered by external criticism. We must also teach them the profound mechanics of human connection. We need to show them how to actively listen, how to express genuine gratitude, and how to navigate conflict with empathy rather than hostility. These are not innate talents. They are critical life skills that must be modeled and practiced. Furthermore, we must equip them with the ultimate armor against the inevitable tragedies of life, the ability to find meaning. Children are naturally philosophical. They want to know why they are here and how they fit into the grand tapestry of the world. If we do not help them attach their lives to a purpose greater than their own immediate pleasure or academic success, they will drift into a dangerous, self-absorbed emptiness. We must encourage them to serve their communities, to care for others, and to understand that their unique gifts are meant to be shared. When we commit to this holistic vision of education, we are doing much more than preventing depression or managing anxiety. We are actively constructing a generation of human beings who are fully alive. We are raising young adults who can step into a chaotic, demanding world with their heads held high, knowing that while they cannot control every circumstance, they have complete mastery over their internal response. They will not just survive the pressures of adulthood, they will possess the profound capacity to transform those pressures into fuel. But to truly understand how they will achieve this, we must look beyond just feeling good. We must examine the raw, untamed engine that drives a human being to push through the impossible and achieve true greatness. Chapter 6. Grit, Character, and the Psychology of High Achievement. We are completely hypnotized by the myth of natural genius. When we witness a breathtaking performance, a master musician playing flawlessly, a brilliant athlete executing an impossible maneuver, or a visionary leader steering a massive organization, our immediate instinct is to credit their innate, unteachable talent. We watch them operate in a state of effortless grace, and we tell ourselves they were simply born with a magical spark that the rest of us lack. This belief is incredibly comforting because it lets us off the hook. If achievement is purely a genetic lottery, we do not have to feel guilty for giving up when the work gets difficult. But when we pull back the curtain on true, world-class mastery, the reality is entirely different. Talent is incredibly common. You have likely met dozens of highly talented people who never achieved anything of lasting significance. What actually separates those who leave a legacy from those who merely possess potential is an entirely different engine. It is a fierce, unyielding quality known as grit. Grit is the rare and powerful combination of burning, long-term passion and relentless perseverance. It is not about the intense, fiery burst of motivation you feel on the first day of a new project. Anyone can be excited on day one. Anyone can buy the running shoes, sketch out the business plan, or write the first page of a novel. The true test of high achievement does not happen at the starting line. It happens on day 100, when the initial excitement has entirely evaporated, when the applause is completely silent, and when the work has become agonizingly repetitive and brutally difficult. Grit is the psychological endurance to stay committed to a single, meaningful goal over a period of years, or even decades, regardless of the setbacks and the devastating plateaus of boredom. It is treating your ultimate ambition not like a quick sprint, but like a grueling, lifelong marathon. To understand the psychology of high achievement, we must profoundly redefine how we view effort. We live in a culture that worships speed and immediate results. If an app takes more than 3 seconds to load, we become deeply frustrated. We carry this same impatience into our personal development, expecting to master complex skills and build magnificent lives over a single weekend. But true accomplishment requires a deliberate, almost radical willingness to slow down and embrace the friction of the process. Think of the individual who sets out to master a difficult foreign language. For the first few weeks, progress is rapid and exciting. But inevitably, they hit a massive wall of confusion. The grammar makes no sense, they sound foolish when they speak, and the mental exhaustion is overwhelming. The person who relies only on natural talent or fleeting motivation will quit in this exact moment, convinced they just do not have the gift for languages. The gritty person recognizes this frustration not as a sign to stop, but as the exact feeling of their brain physically changing and growing. They do not quit. They sit back down at the desk.
The bedrock of this kind of perseverance is character, specifically the quiet, unglamorous trait of self-discipline. We often confuse self-discipline with self-punishment, imagining a life completely stripped of joy and spontaneity. But true self-discipline is actually the ultimate form of self-love and liberation. It is the ability to make a choice in the present moment that your future self will profoundly thank you for. It is the capacity to look at a short-term temptation, the urge to sleep in, the desire to abandon a difficult task for cheap entertainment, the instinct to walk away from a necessary but uncomfortable conversation, and consciously decide that your long-term vision is vastly more important. High achievers are not immune to these temptations. They feel the exact same urge to quit that you do. The difference is entirely in their response. They have trained their internal character to prioritize their deepest values over their immediate comfort. This internal architecture is incredibly vital because the road to significant accomplishment is paved with constant, bruising failure. If you are attempting anything truly worthwhile, you will inevitably fall flat on your face. You will lose the deal, miss the mark, and experience public defeat. Without grit and deep-seated character, failure is interpreted as a devastating verdict on your identity. It whispers that you are an imposter and that you never belonged in the arena to begin with. But when you have cultivated a psychology of high achievement, failure fundamentally changes its meaning. It transforms from a permanent red light into a temporary detour. It becomes raw, invaluable data. The gritty individual looks at a massive failure, absorbs the sting, and immediately asks what can be learned, what must be adjusted, and how they can return to the arena tomorrow stronger than they were today. Developing this level of psychological endurance requires you to passionately align your daily actions with a profound, overriding sense of purpose. Grit is nearly impossible to sustain if you are only chasing superficial rewards like money or status. Those external motivators simply do not possess enough gravitational pull to keep you anchored when the storms of adversity roll in. You must connect your pursuit of excellence to something that matters deeply to your soul. When a person is working toward a goal that serves their highest values, helps their family, or elevates their community, they tap into a wellspring of resilience that never runs dry. The grueling hours and the painful setbacks stop feeling like meaningless suffering and start feeling like necessary sacrifices on the path to a noble destination. When we integrate grit and character into our understanding of well-being, we realize that a flourishing life is not supposed to be effortless. We must completely discard the dangerous illusion that a good life is an easy life. The most profound, unshakable satisfaction a human being can experience comes from standing at the summit of a mountain that required every ounce of your strength, intellect, and courage to climb. It is the quiet, unbreakable confidence of knowing you did not take the easy way out. You built your character in the dark, you persevered through the pain, and you forged yourself into someone capable of immense achievement. But the journey of human development does not stop at personal success. To truly master the art of living, we must understand what happens when the mountain we are climbing collapses beneath our feet, and how we can forge ultimate strength in the fires of extreme adversity. Chapter 7. Building Ultimate Psychological Resilience. We spend an enormous amount of time and energy preparing for the expected challenges of life. We study rigorously to pass difficult exams. We save money for anticipated expenses, and we exercise to keep our physical bodies strong for the years ahead. But what happens when the absolute unthinkable occurs? What happens when the mountain you have been climbing so diligently suddenly collapses beneath your feet? There are moments in human existence when the ground vanishes without warning, a sudden and devastating loss, an unexpected diagnosis, or a catastrophic failure that sweeps away everything you have built. In these moments of profound shock, sheer grit and daily discipline are put to the ultimate test. It is here that we discover the critical difference between those who shatter under extreme pressure and those who possess the remarkable capacity to bend, absorb the impact, and ultimately stand back up. This capacity is not a magical gift. It is the result of profound, deliberate psychological resilience. For a long time, society has treated mental fortitude as something you either have or you do not, a mysterious quality revealed only in the darkest of hours. We have operated under the dangerous assumption that the only time to address our emotional survival skills is after the tragedy has already struck. This is the equivalent of waiting until a massive hurricane makes landfall before you finally decide to learn how to build a strong foundation for your house. It is too late. The most resilient individuals in the world, those who operate in incredibly high-stakes environments, facing life or death decisions daily, do not wait for the storm. They engage in a rigorous, proactive training of their minds. They understand that psychological fitness is just as real and just as vital as physical fitness. You would never attempt to lift a massive weight without first training your muscles for months in advance. You must apply this exact same logic to your mind. Building ultimate resilience begins with fundamentally rewiring how you interpret adversity in the exact moment it strikes. When an overwhelming crisis hits, the human brain is biologically programmed to hit the panic button. It instantly begins to write the most catastrophic story possible. If you lose your job, your brain does not just say, "I am currently unemployed." It screams, "I am a total failure, I will never find work again, and I will lose everything." This rapid, downward mental spiral is the enemy of survival. It paralyzes your ability to think critically and drains the precious energy you need to navigate the crisis. The master skill of resilience is the ability to forcefully interrupt this catastrophic narrative. It is the capacity to step back in the middle of the storm, catch the terrifying story your mind is inventing, and demand evidence. It involves looking at the worst-case scenario, acknowledging the best-case scenario, and then ruthlessly focusing your energy on the most likely scenario. By doing this, you reclaim your power from fear and ground yourself in actionable reality. But psychological resilience is not built in isolation. It requires a comprehensive approach to how you live every facet of your life.
Imagine a massive structural bridge designed to withstand extreme earthquakes. The bridge is not held up by one single massive cable. If it were, the moment that cable snapped, the entire structure would fall. Instead, it is supported by a complex network of thousands of interconnected steel lines. If one snaps, the others instantly absorb the tension. Your life must be constructed the exact same way. If your entire identity and sense of security are wrapped up in one single pillar, perhaps your career or one specific relationship, a crisis in that area will completely destroy your foundation. True, unbreakable resilience requires comprehensive fitness. You must actively build strength in your emotional life, your social connections, your physical health, and your spiritual or philosophical beliefs. When a devastating blow hits your professional life, your strong family connections and your deep sense of personal meaning act as the safety cables that keep you from plunging into the abyss. Consider how elite emergency response teams prepare for the chaos of a disaster. They do not just memorize instruction manuals, they run intense, highly realistic simulations. They practice communicating when their radios fail, they practice navigating when the lights go out, and they practice making decisions when their hearts are pounding out of their chests. They intentionally expose themselves to controlled stress so that when the real disaster hits, their minds recognize the landscape. You can simulate this in your own life. You do not need to seek out tragedy, but you can intentionally practice discomfort. You can lean into difficult conversations rather than avoiding them. You can push yourself physically and mentally in challenging environments. Every time you willingly step outside your comfort zone and successfully manage your own anxiety, you are laying another brick in your fortress of resilience. Ultimately, the goal of this comprehensive psychological armor is not to make you numb to the pain of life. Resilient people feel grief, terror, and heartbreak just as deeply as anyone else. They simply refuse to let the darkness be the final chapter of their story. They have built the internal architecture necessary to absorb the darkest days, process the intense emotion, and eventually plot a course back to the light. They know that while they cannot control the waves that crash over them, they are the absolute masters of the ship. Yet, as we study the human capacity to survive the unthinkable, we uncover a truth that is even more breathtaking than mere survival. We often assume that the best possible outcome after a devastating trauma is simply to return to baseline, to somehow get back to the person we were before the sky fell. But human beings are vastly more complex and vastly more powerful than that. What if the breaking point is not just a test of your endurance? What if the shattering of your world is the exact mechanism required to build a stronger, deeper, and more magnificent life than you ever thought possible? This brings us to a profound and deeply hopeful truth about the human spirit. Chapter 8. Turning Trauma and Adversity into Profound Growth. The cultural narrative surrounding trauma and extreme adversity is overwhelmingly focused on permanent damage. We are taught from a very young age that intense suffering leaves an indelible, unhealable scar on the human psyche. We are told that when the absolute worst happens, when the tragedy strikes, when the heart is shattered, when the life we knew is completely destroyed, we are permanently broken. Society offers immense sympathy, but it often carries a silent, heavy expectation. You will never truly be the same, and your best days are now firmly behind you. We hear endlessly about post-traumatic stress, and while the reality of that suffering is profound and deeply valid, it is only half of the story. This singular focus ignores one of the most magnificent, breathtaking capabilities of the human spirit. There is a fundamental difference between simply surviving a tragedy and actually using that tragedy as fuel for immense personal evolution. Resilience is the remarkable ability to bounce back to your baseline after a heavy blow. But there is a deeper, vastly more powerful phenomenon, the concept of post-traumatic growth. This is the radical proven reality that the worst experience of your life can actually serve as the exact catalyst that propels you to a level of psychological strength, deep empathy, and profound purpose that you never could have reached otherwise. It is the realization that the fire that burns your world to the ground can also clear the soil for an entirely new, magnificent forest to grow. To understand how this miraculous growth happens, you must picture your core beliefs about the world as a house. Throughout your life, you build this house using assumptions that keep you feeling safe. You might believe that the world is inherently fair, that good things happen to good people, or that you are always protected from random chaos. When a profound trauma hits, it acts like a massive psychological earthquake. It completely shatters your house of beliefs. Suddenly, you are sitting in the terrifying rubble of your former life, entirely exposed to the elements. The pain of this moment is absolute. But as the dust settles, a critical choice emerges. You can spend the rest of your life desperately trying to rebuild the exact same fragile house, or you can look at the raw materials scattered in the rubble and decide to build a fortress. Rebuilding this new, unbreakable structure requires a radical shift in your internal narrative. Human beings are, at our core, storytelling creatures. We understand our lives through the stories we tell ourselves. In the immediate aftermath of extreme adversity, the story is almost always one of pure victimhood and despair. That story is entirely necessary and completely valid in the early stages of grief. But if you allow that exact script to become your permanent identity, you will remain trapped in the rubble forever. True growth occurs when you slowly, painfully, and courageously begin to write a new chapter. The story must transition from what was taken from you to what you are choosing to build out of the ashes. You begin to weave the tragedy not as the end of your book, but as the brutal turning point that forged your ultimate character. Consider the universal story of someone who experiences a catastrophic, life-altering loss, perhaps the collapse of a lifelong dream or the sudden loss of their entire livelihood. In the immediate darkness, there is only despair. But in the quiet, agonizing months that follow, stripped of their former ego and their comfortable routines, they often discover a profound truth. They realize who their true friends actually are, dropping all superficial relationships. They discover a well of internal fortitude they never knew existed, simply because they were never forced to dig that deep before. Often, they pivot their lives entirely, dedicating themselves to helping others navigate similar darkness. They find a level of profound meaning and fulfillment that their previous, comfortable life never could have provided. They are not thankful for the tragedy, but they become fiercely grateful for the unmatched strength and clarity it forged within them. This profound growth manifests in very specific, deeply beautiful ways for those who walk through the fire and refuse to surrender. People who process immense adversity frequently report an intensified, vibrant appreciation for the simple fact of being alive. The mundane details of life, a quiet morning, a warm cup of coffee, the sound of a loved one's voice, suddenly feel miraculous. They experience a deepening of their personal relationships, completely dropping all trivial arguments to connect with others on a bare, authentic soul level. And most importantly, they discover their own unshakable resilience. When you have survived the absolute worst the world can throw at you, the everyday anxieties of life completely lose their grip on your mind. You walk through the world with a quiet, powerful confidence, knowing that you cannot be broken. This is the ultimate victory of the human spirit. It is the realization that your trauma is not your final destination. It is a brutal, agonizing initiation. We must completely reject the idea that we are fragile creatures destined to be permanently diminished by the harshness of the world. We are built for adaptation. We are built for spectacular growth. But this profound transformation of the mind does not happen in a vacuum. Our psychology and our physical vessels are inextricably linked. To truly master the art of flourishing and construct an unbreakable life, we must understand how our psychological triumphs and our emotional vitality literally reshape our physical biology.
Chapter 9. The Biology of Optimism and Positive Health. For centuries, society has drawn a thick, impenetrable line between the mind and the body. We have been taught to view ourselves as two entirely separate machines operating in the same space. When our physical body breaks down, we go to a medical doctor to repair the bones, the muscles, or the organs. When our mind feels heavy, we seek out a therapist to untangle our thoughts. We treat physical health as a matter of biology and mental health as a matter of psychology, assuming that the two rarely speak the same language. This separation is one of the most persistent and dangerous illusions of modern life. The profound, undeniable truth is that your mind and your body are engaged in a relentless, continuous conversation. Every thought you have, every emotion you feel, and every story you tell yourself about the future is instantly translated into a complex chemical language that your physical cells completely understand. Consider a scenario involving two individuals who undergo the exact same intensive physical surgery. They are the same age, they have similar medical histories, and they receive the exact same treatment from the exact same doctors. From a purely mechanical standpoint, their recovery trajectories should be identical. But one individual is a profound pessimist. They view the surgery as a catastrophic blow, they expect the recovery to be agonizingly slow, and they constantly dwell on the likelihood of a relapse. The other individual is a trained optimist. They view the surgery as a temporary, necessary hurdle on the path to reclaiming their vitality. They vividly imagine themselves returning to the activities they love and focus relentlessly on the daily progress they are making. The difference in their recovery is rarely just a matter of mood, it is a matter of measurable biology. The pessimist's brain, constantly perceiving a threat, floods their system with stress hormones. This chronic chemical alarm state actively suppresses their immune system, increases physical inflammation, and slows down the cellular repair process. Their physical body is simply following the catastrophic instructions it is receiving from the mind. The optimist, however, by intentionally choosing a narrative of hope and forward momentum, signals to their biology that the immediate danger has passed. Their stress hormone levels drop, their cardiovascular system relaxes, and their immune system is free to deploy all its resources toward rapid, magnificent healing. Their optimism is not just a comforting psychological blanket. It is a literal, biological medicine. This profound connection completely redefines how we must think about our physical health. We spend immense amounts of time and money trying to protect our bodies from external threats. We meticulously filter our drinking water, we obsess over reading the nutritional labels on our food, and we dedicate hours to physical exercise to strengthen our hearts. Yet, we entirely ignore the massive internal impact of a toxic psychological environment. Chronic pessimism, relentless anxiety, and deep-seated hostility are not merely bad moods, they are biological toxins. Operating in a constant state of cynicism and despair places a heavy, unrelenting burden on your cardiovascular system. It damages the arteries, elevates blood pressure, and dramatically increases your vulnerability to infectious diseases. You would never knowingly drink poison, yet many of us routinely flood our nervous systems with catastrophic thoughts that slowly tear down our physical vitality. To build ultimate, unbreakable health, you must realize that your immune system is constantly eavesdropping on your internal monologue. If you want a strong, resilient physical vessel, you cannot just feed it healthy food. You must feed it hope, purpose, and positive emotion. Optimism is the most potent biological shield you can ever forge. However, we must be very careful to understand what true biological optimism actually is. It is not a delusion. It is not the foolish belief that if you just smile enough you will never get sick, or that serious physical ailments can be magically cured by simply wishing them away. True optimism is deeply grounded in reality. It is the fierce, proactive belief that while you cannot control every physical vulnerability or genetic predisposition, you have an immense amount of control over your response to them. When a resilient, optimistic person faces a physical illness, they do not ignore it. They actively research their options, they strictly follow through with their physical treatments, and they aggressively manage their stress levels to give their biology the absolute best possible chance of fighting back. They become an active participant in their own healing, rather than a helpless victim of their circumstances. This shifts the entire paradigm of aging and longevity. We often view aging as an inevitable, miserable decline, a slow surrender to physical decay. But when you examine individuals who live remarkably long, incredibly vibrant lives, well into their later decades, you rarely find people who spent their youth drowning in bitterness and anxiety. You find individuals who maintained a deep sense of meaning, who nurtured joyful social connections, and who met the world with a persistent, sunny resilience. Their robust physical health in their twilight years is the compound interest of a lifetime spent cultivating positive emotion. They did not just outlive their peers, they outlived them on a cellular level, guided by a mind that stubbornly refused to surrender to despair. Embracing the biology of optimism is a profound act of personal empowerment. It means that your health is not entirely at the mercy of your genetics or your environment. You possess an internal pharmacy capable of dispensing incredibly powerful, life-enhancing chemicals simply by changing the way you interpret the world. Every time you choose gratitude over complaint, every time you choose to view a challenge as an opportunity rather than a disaster, and every time you actively cultivate joy, you are literally fortifying your heart, strengthening your immune system, and adding vibrant years to your life. But if this magnificent transformation is possible within a single human body, we are forced to ask an even larger, more breathtaking question. If focusing on true well-being, rather than just the absence of illness, completely revitalizes the individual, what happens when we scale this exact philosophy up to an entire society? What happens when a global culture stops measuring its ultimate success purely by the accumulation of wealth and starts measuring it by the flourishing of its people? This brings us to the ultimate horizon of our journey. Chapter 10. The Future of Well-Being, Beyond Wealth and Success. Imagine stepping onto a medical scale that is only capable of measuring the weight of your shoes and then using that single number to determine the overall health of your entire body. It would be an absurd, dangerous way to evaluate your physical vitality. Yet for generations we have evaluated the success of human civilization using a method that is just as flawed. We have held a singular, obsessive metric for measuring the progress of our world, our nations, and our communities: the sheer accumulation of wealth. We have looked at the collective output of our societies, tallied up the monetary value of every good and service produced, and boldly declared that if the financial number is growing, human life must be getting better. We have treated money not as a useful tool, but as the ultimate destination. This relentless pursuit of wealth made perfect sense during the eras of human history when raw survival was the primary challenge. When a community is starving, when there is no shelter from the winter, and when basic medicine is entirely absent, every single unit of wealth directly relieves profound human suffering. In the realm of sheer survival, money is a miraculous lifeline. But a fascinating and troubling paradox occurs once a society rises above the poverty line and secures its basic needs. Once the roof is built, the food is plentiful, and safety is established, the math fundamentally changes. Simply piling more and more gold onto a comfortable life does not generate more joy. In fact, if you look at the most modern, technologically advanced, and financially wealthy societies in the world today, you will witness a silent epidemic of depression, profound anxiety, and a devastating lack of meaning. We are wealthier than any generation in the history of humanity, yet we are starving for something that money simply cannot buy. The traditional promise was always clear: build the economy, increase the profit margins, work tirelessly for the promotion, and deep fulfillment will naturally follow as a reward. But we have arrived at the finish line of that promise, only to find it entirely empty. This realization is not a cause for despair. It is the clarion call for the next great frontier of human evolution. We are standing at a monumental crossroads. Having largely conquered the mechanical problems of producing enough resources, we must now pivot our immense collective energy toward a vastly more important goal. We must shift our focus from merely increasing our standard of living to profoundly elevating our standard of living beautifully. We must move beyond the economics of wealth and embrace the economics of well-being. Imagine what the world would look like if our institutions, our businesses, and our leaders completely redefined their ultimate objectives. Think about a modern workplace. A company that operates purely on the old metric of extracting maximum profit will invariably treat its employees like disposable machinery, squeezing them for every ounce of productivity until they completely burn out. But a visionary organization understands that human beings are not machines. What if a company measured its success not just by its quarterly earnings, but by the deep engagement, the creative vitality, and the psychological health of its workforce? The astonishing truth is that when environments are designed to help people flourish, when workers feel respected, when they find genuine meaning in their daily tasks, and when they are given the autonomy to use their highest strengths, they do not just become happier, they become magnificently productive, wildly innovative, and fiercely loyal. Prioritizing well-being does not sabotage success. It is the ultimate, sustainable engine for it. This exact same revolution must happen in how we design our communities and our public policies. For decades, we have built cities designed solely to maximize commercial efficiency. We constructed sprawling concrete grids meant to move cars from homes to offices as quickly as possible. But what if we started designing environments that actively fostered human connection? What if we prioritized public spaces that encourage neighbors to interact, created educational systems that teach resilience alongside mathematics, and championed policies that allow parents the time and energy to actually raise their children with intention and joy? We have the power, the resources, and the knowledge to construct a world that actively pulls the best out of human nature, rather than one that constantly grinds it down. However, this massive global shift will never begin in the halls of government or the boardrooms of massive corporations. It must begin exactly where all profound change begins, within the quiet architecture of your own individual life. You cannot demand that the world prioritize well-being if you are still running your own life on the exhausting, endless treadmill of superficial success. You must become the living, breathing proof of this new philosophy. You now possess the blueprint. You understand that a magnificent life is not a fortunate accident, but a deliberate construction. It is built by aggressively hunting for the good in your daily life and training your brain to notice the light. It is built by fiercely leaning into your unique strengths, rather than agonizing over your weaknesses. It requires you to prioritize deep, authentic connections, to actively celebrate the victories of those around you, and to attach your unique talents to a purpose vastly larger than yourself. You know now that the storms of life will inevitably come, but you have the grit, the character, and the psychological armor to not only weather the devastation, but to use the rubble to build a stronger fortress. You understand that your mind and your body are one beautifully integrated system, and that the optimism you carry in your heart is the exact medicine your physical body desperately needs. The time for merely surviving is over. The era of accepting a baseline of exhaustion, cynicism, and empty achievement is behind you. You are completely equipped to step into the arena of your own life with unprecedented power and grace. The world does not just need your labor, your compliance, or your financial output. The world is absolutely desperate for your vitality. It is hungry for human beings who have come fully alive. Step forward, apply these principles with unyielding discipline, and claim the magnificent, flourishing life that is your absolute birthright.